An elderly man, convinced his son was taking him to a nursing home, steps out of the car. But as his feet touch the ground, his eyes widen, his breath catches, and he is utterly stunned. You will be shocked by what he saw. Hector Rivera sat quietly by the window in his small Los Angeles room, watching the streets below. The 74-year-old widower had always taken pride in his independence. For years, he lived on his own terms, working hard and building a life he could be proud of. But now, with his body growing weaker and his spirit fading, he felt out of place. Living with his son Mateo and daughter-in-law Carla, Hector often wondered if he still belonged in their lives. Mateo, adopted by Hector and his late wife Elena, had grown into a strong man. Despite the challenges of being black in a world that often judged him unfairly, Mateo persevered. Hector had guided him with love and unwavering support. Their bond was strong, yet Hector feared he had become a burden. Hector's days blurred into routine, quiet meals, short conversations, and hours spent looking at old photos of Elena. Maria, the kind neighbor who brought him food, once said, "No one wants us when we're old, Hector." Her words lingered in his mind, deepening his guilt. One evening, Hector broke the silence. "Take me to a nursing home," he said firmly, his voice heavy with emotion. "I don't want to hold you back anymore." Mateo, startled, replied gently, "Papa, you're not a burden. Let's talk later, okay?" But Hector's mind was made up. Days passed until one Saturday morning, Mateo knocked on his door. "Papa, get ready," he said, holding a neatly pressed shirt and slacks. "We're going on a trip." "A trip?" Hector asked, uncertain. Mateo nodded. "Just pack a few things, trust me." Hector packed carefully, folding his few belongings with precision. He placed Elena's photograph on top of the pile, the edges of the frame smooth under his fingers. Zipping the suitcase, he felt a mix of relief and sadness. The car ride began in silence. Hector sat in the passenger seat, clutching his suitcase tightly. Mateo drove with calm focus, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. The bustling streets of Los Angeles soon faded behind them, replaced by rolling hills and winding roads lined with oak trees. Hector rolled down the window slightly, letting the fresh air fill his lungs. The faint scent of wildflowers stirred memories of home. "Where are we going?" Hector finally asked, his voice soft but tinged with curiosity. Mateo glanced at him briefly. "You'll see, Papa," he said, his tone steady. Hector leaned back, his thoughts drifting to memories of Elena and their San Diego home. The laughter, the garden, and his loyal horse, Palomo. Those days felt distant now, like another life. "Almost there," Mateo said as the car turned onto a gravel driveway. The tires crunched, and Mateo stepped out to open Hector's door. Hector hesitated, adjusting his glasses. Stepping out, his breath caught. His hands trembled as he stared ahead. What was this place? Why did it feel like home? The car sped along winding country roads, the city fading into open fields and rolling hills. Hector sat quietly in the passenger seat, gripping his suitcase tightly. He stared out the window as the scent of wildflowers and fresh soil filled the car, tugging at buried memories. The silence between father and son was heavy, but not uncomfortable, as if both knew words would only break something fragile. Hector glanced at Mateo, whose steady hands gripped the wheel. Questions swirled in Hector's mind, but he hesitated to ask. Instead, he focused on the passing scenery, an old barn with peeling red paint, fields dotted with sunflowers and clusters of oak trees. Each sight stirred something familiar. Hector's thoughts drifted to the home he and Elena had built in San Diego, a place filled with love, laughter, and the garden they tended together. He wondered if this trip marked the end of that life, or if something new awaited him. "Am I leaving everything behind?" he asked himself. Mateo caught the distant look in his father's eyes. "You okay, Papa?" he asked gently. Hector nodded. "I'm fine," he replied, though his voice betrayed uncertainty. He didn't want to burden Mateo with his doubts. The car hummed along, the only sound in the growing quiet of the countryside. Hector leaned back, letting his mind wander to memories of Elena, her laugh, her touch, the warmth she brought into his life. The ache of her absence felt sharper here, away from the distractions of the city. "Do you remember the garden?" Hector asked suddenly. "The one your mom and I used to tend?" Mateo smiled softly. "Of course, Papa. The sunflowers, her favorite flowers, and the way you always whistled while you worked. She called it her sanctuary." Hector chuckled, a hint of sadness in the sound. "It was more than a garden. It was home. I miss it. I miss her. Mateo nodded, his expression tender. I know, Papa. I miss her too. The road narrowed, trees growing denser as sunlight filtered through the branches. Hector's grip on his suitcase loosened as he took in the serenity of the drive. There was a sense of calm here, a deliberate stillness that made him feel lighter. Where are we going? Hector asked again, his voice steadier now. Mateo glanced at him with a faint smile. You'll see, Papa. Trust me. As they turned a final bend, the car slowed, the crunch of gravel under the tires signaling their arrival. Ahead, a house stood bathed in the soft light of the setting sun. Its white paint gleamed, the porch railings sturdy and new. Hector squinted, adjusting his glasses, his breath catching. The house felt familiar, yet impossibly so. What is this place? Hector murmured. Mateo parked the car and stepped out, walking around to open his father's door. Come on, Papa, he said, extending a hand. We're here. Hector hesitated, his legs unsteady as he stepped out. His eyes never left the house, his mind racing with questions. Why does it look like home? Mateo smiled, his voice steady. Because it is. Welcome home, Papa. Hector stepped onto the gravel path, his eyes fixed on the house ahead. The white paint gleamed in the evening light, the porch railings sturdy and inviting. Every detail stirred something deep within him, a memory, a sense of familiarity. Mateo walked ahead, smiling gently. Come on, Papa, there's more to see. Hector followed, his legs trembling slightly. At the porch, he paused, brushing his hand over the smooth wood of the railing, the scent of fresh pine mixed with wildflowers from the nearby field. What is this place? Hector asked quietly. Why does it feel so familiar? Mateo turned, his voice soft but steady. It's your home, Papa. The home you thought you'd lost. Hector's breath caught. Stepping inside, he froze. The wooden floors, cozy fireplace, and walls painted in Elena's favorite colors were all there. It was as if he'd stepped into a memory. Above the fireplace, a photograph of Hector and Elena on their wedding day caught his eye. His hand trembled as he touched the frame. How is this possible? He murmured. Mateo placed a hand on his shoulder. We rebuilt it. After the fire, I couldn't let you lose it completely. Carla and I worked with the neighbors to bring it back. Tears streamed down Hector's cheeks. You rebuilt all of this? For me? Mateo nodded. This house isn't just a place. It's the life you and Mom created. I wanted to give that back to you. Hector sank into a familiar armchair by the fireplace, Elena's favorite spot. He noticed every detail. The carved bird from Mexico, embroidered pillows Elena had sewn, and the brass lamp from their wedding. Each item told a story, a reminder of what he thought was gone. Mateo handed him a photo album. We saved what we could. I thought you'd want to see these. Hector opened it, his hands trembling. Inside were photographs of him and Elena in the garden, Mateo as a child laughing on the porch, and family meals. Each picture brought bittersweet memories. This means everything, Hector said, his voice breaking. I thought I'd lost it all. You haven't lost anything, Papa, Mateo said softly. This house, this life, it's still here, and so are we. A sound from outside broke the moment. A gentle whinny. Hector turned, his eyes widening. Go see, Mateo said, smiling. Hector stepped onto the porch. Tied near the garden stood Palomo, his loyal horse. The stallion's coat gleamed, his mane freshly brushed. Hector hurried to him, tears streaming as he wrapped his arms around Palomo's neck. You're here, he whispered. You're really here. Mateo joined him, his voice calm. We found him near town after the fire. The neighbors helped care for him until we could bring him home. Hector turned to Mateo. You've given me everything. I don't know how to thank you. Mateo smiled. You don't need to thank me, Papa. You've already given me more than I could ever repay. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Hector stood beside Palomo, his heart finally at peace. For the first time in years, he felt whole. His home, his family, his memories, they were all still here. Should children feel obligated to care for their aging parents? Or should everyone prioritize their own lives? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.